I propose that we go into public session.
Agreed.
The meeting this morning has been convened to consider the Children's Health Bill 2018. The purpose of the bill is to provide for the establishment of the functions of the Children's Health Ireland, the new board of the Children's Health Ireland, the transfer of certain employees, properties and rights and liabilities to Children's Health Ireland, and the National Paediatric Hospital Development Board. I would like to welcome to the committee the Minister for State with special responsibility for mental health and older people, Mr. Jim Daly, and his officials to the meeting. Thank you very much for coming, Minister. There are a number of related proposed amendments and groupings arise. It is proposed to group the following amendments: 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 6 to 8 inclusive, 9 and 10. All other amendments which are not grouped will be discussed individually. I will now go to section 1 of the bill. The question is that section 1 stands part of the bill. Section 2. Section 2 has an amendment under the name of Louise O'Reilly. Amendment 1 and number 2 are related and will be discussed together. Deputy O'Reilly to move Amendment 1.
I move.
Thank you.
May I say a few words?
Yes.
Okay. So I appreciate that, and some people have said to me this is not the appropriate place to legislate for the name of the hospital, but if we don't do it here, then I'm not sure where exactly we are going to have the opportunity to be able to move this. My colleague Deputy O'Snuddy has for a long number of years now been pursuing, well, A, the building of the hospital, but B, the naming of the hospital after Kathleen Lynn. There are many good reasons why Kathleen Lynn would be an appropriate person to name the hospital after. She is the founder of St Ultan's Children's Hospital. She's a woman who worked extensively with children and women in particular in Dublin, but not outside of Dublin too. She's in this year, as we commemorate 100 years since some women, not all women, but some women got the vote, it would be appropriate to remember an Irish woman like Kathleen Lynn. She was a suffragette, a volunteer in the Citizens' Army, and she also participated in the Rising in 1916. I can't think of another person who would be more appropriate. And my understanding is the initial name that was chosen is now, and it wouldn't have been one that was to my liking anyway, but it is now not going to be the case. So we would ask that consideration be given. I note that historians such as Martin Manser and others have backed this call. It's not just a call coming from my party. It's coming from many quarters. I've yet to hear a good argument against naming the hospital after Kathleen Lynn. So, Sinead, Chair.
Thank you very much, Deputy O'Reilly. Minister.
Thank you. Yeah. I do not propose to accept amendment number 1. The legal name of the new body under this bill is Children's Health Ireland. This broad name reflects the object and functions of the new body, which are broader than just a hospital. As the Minister mentioned during the second stage debate on this bill, it is considered that it may be useful for the new body to also have an operational name or brand name. The Department is engaging with the Children's Hospital Group in arrangements for a new process to agree an operational name, which would be endorsed by Government. This has yet to begin. While ensuring wider consultation, the new process is expected to acknowledge the work undertaken in the previous naming process and the valuable input of staff, patient services users and the Youth Advisory Council. A number of names have already been suggested, and these and any other names put forward will be considered as part of the process. These names will include, of course, Kathleen Lynn, as put forward by the Deputy. The new operational name will be endorsed by Government before it is announced. So accordingly, I do not intend to accept amendment number 1.
Thank you very much, Minister. Deputy, are you pressing the amendment?
Chair, at this point I will withdraw the amendment, but I will be resubmitting it at report stage, and I will just for the purpose of the record say I still have yet to receive any to hear any good arguments in favour of not calling the hospital after Kathleen Lynn. Thank you.
So you're withdrawing the amendment?
I will withdraw and I'll resubmit.
So the question then is that Section 2 stand part of the bill? Is that agreed? The question is that Section 3 stand part of the bill? Is that agreed? The question is that Section 4 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed?
That's agreed.
The question that Section 5 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? Agreed? In relation to Section 6, there is an Amendment 2, again under the name of Deputy O'Reilly, already discussed with number 1. Deputy O'Reilly to move.
I move. Since we've already discussed it, I will withdraw and resubmit.
The question then is that Section 6 stand part of the bill. Agreed. That Section 7 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Section 8, again, an amendment number 3 in the name of Deputy O'Reilly, and number 3 and number 4 are related and will be discussed together. Deputy O'Reilly, do you move Amendment 3?
I move Amendment 3. And
yes.
Chair. The purpose of this amendment is really to have a discussion about this subsection. The Hospital Board has a mission, and the mission is to provide paediatric health care to children across the state. It's a mystery to me, and the Minister might be able to explain to me why the Board or why the hospital would need to become a member of a company. It seems like that it would be operating nearly as a separate entity, or and that's why I would call it into question. Further, we understand the need for provision for borrowing and all of that, but it does seem that this section it appears to create nearly a separate entity that would somehow be at arm's length, and therefore we have concerns about this section. Thank you, Chair.
Minister.
Okay, and thank you, Deputy. The new body will have to have an arrangement with multiple universities, academic institutions, research entities due to its national remit in the education of healthcare professionals in paediatrics and engagement in paediatric research. The formal arrangements between the universities with the new body will require some corporate identity to be decided. While this is not yet clear, it is considered prudent to allow the new body to become a member of a company, subject of course, as you can see, to the consent of the Minister. The provision also keeps options open for the type of structure that may be required for a body to carry out philanthropy for Children's Health Ireland. Under Amendment 3, under Amendment 4, the provision allowing the new body to borrow for current as well as capital purposes is considered useful, but as you can see from the bill, strictly controlled. The ability of service providers to respond to strategic investment opportunities in the public interest within legal control limits must be seen to be a progressive step in managing hospital facilities into the future. I understand that there may be a concern about that the retention of this provision will allow this and other governments to underfund the hospital and exploit the provision by instructing the new body to borrow money for the purposes of providing healthcare services. Nothing could be further from the truth. The new body will be funded by the state as a Section 38 agency, as the 3 children's hospitals currently are, through a service level agreement reached with the HSE. The primary driver for a service provider to borrow is to drive better value in services provided to patients in a cost-effective and timely manner. This provision allows the Board to respond to strategic opportunities or needs as they arise. Borrowing for current purposes could be considered in scenarios where the hospital cannot generate sufficient internal funding resources in the short term to develop a service, but is able to demonstrate longer-term viability and an ability to repay. The ability to borrow within controls creates this opportunity. Circumstances of which the new Children's Hospital would make a case to borrow money or engage in activities that have an element of borrowing could also arise in regard to leasing or licensing of commercial areas or leasing of equipment. This could also encompass investment in a strategic service initiative or expanding operational capacity in a service that has hospital income generating potential, such as attracting international patients to avail of cutting-edge, high-technology services or the specialist paediatric expertise and experience that will be available in the new hospital. There is also the need to consider possible scenarios whereby the new body could require the potential to borrow to invest in extending existing services further in order to generate hospital income by providing cross-jurisdictional services, for example, for children from Northern Ireland. as part of an accountability framework. Such scenarios would be subject to approval of a business case demonstrating a return on investment with the potential to repay borrowings and generate hospital income. The bill allows for proper and fully accountable governance and management within the framework of national policy. It is acknowledged that since the new body will be largely funded by the state, its borrowings would form part of the overall public debt of the state as assessed by the EU and other bodies, and the state must exercise control before such liabilities are undertaken. The bill therefore includes a provision for borrowing subject to the approval of the HSE, Minister, and approval of the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform and the Minister for Finance. It is therefore considered appropriate to provide for the potential to borrow in the bill. Accordingly, I do not accept or propose to accept amendments number 3 and 4.
I might respond. The Minister refers to the current children's hospitals and the fact that they operate as Section 38 agencies. Do they have the facility that you're seeking to put in this section? They already have the facility to borrow for current purposes.
St James is a hospital that has that.
No, I'm talking about the other 3 children's hospitals.
Well, I mean,
I'm just understanding why, if they don't have it, you'd seek to introduce it now. And I mean, you addressed the concern I have, but you didn't. You referenced it, but you didn't address it. So it does strike me as problematic that a Section 38 hospital, as we're establishing, would have the capacity to borrow for current purposes. I immediately see that gives licence, if I can. It's probably not the right word, but that gives the facility to underfund and for the hospital then to borrow. And I don't see the need for it to.
Okay. I suppose, Deputy, is trying to future-proof the viability of an institution or something that we're establishing here. That can become part of modern-day medical practice. They may want to go in, as I said in my speech, go into a cross-jurisdictional area. They may want to expand a service, an existing service, and to treat people from another jurisdiction. They may wish to borrow monies to set up that service, and they may be able to pay back for that service over time. So that brings in a commercial aspect to the viability of the hospital they're establishing. We have precedent there, but you could bring it down to its smallest function, to borrow to buy a photocopier. You know, that's what, and they can pay it back in an operational process. That makes sense for schools, for different bodies. There isn't anything new here, but when it comes to healthcare, what we're trying to do is future-proof the viability of this and not to have their hands restrained to allow them to do that. Now, before I answer that, whether the existing hospitals, the 3 in the Children's Temple Street, Crumlin,
we have to confirm that because they're not state bodies.
Okay, they're not state ones. St James is the one I gave the example of one that has the ability to borrow at the moment, but the other 3 are not state ones, so I'll have to get that confirmation.
But it strikes me, Minister, you're trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. So you talk about this in medical terms, but from my understanding and my contacts with members of the medical community, doctors aren't looking for this. So if you're trying to fix a problem that doctors don't have, you're giving the hospital the capacity to get itself into debt to borrow for equipment. But if you can't point to an example of a hospital where they don't have this facility but they can't purchase, are you saying that hospitals that don't have this facility can't purchase equipment or can't be future-proofed, or that there is a... See, this is where my difficulty is. I think that I don't hold with the notion that hospitals will be getting themselves into debt in the first instance, right? So, but secondly, if doctors aren't looking for it, and if the problem doesn't exist in terms of hospitals currently not being able to buy a photocopier or not being able to buy equipment, then you're trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. If you're trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist, maybe, with respect, and I'm not trying to be smart, but there's loads of problems that do exist that probably could be fixed, but this one doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, well, as I understand it, Deputy, your issue is primarily with current. Am I correct in that? Yeah, and what I'm trying to explain to you, that current expenditure will, I suppose, refer primarily to service provision. So if the hospital wishes to extend its range of services, borrowing may become a part of that. And if they can secure income, as I said, for an example, like if they would go into another jurisdiction and offer procedures to patients from the north of Ireland and would be paid for by another jurisdiction, well, they would provide a compelling case where they would wish to borrow the money. It would still have to go through for ministerial approval. It would still have to go through the checks and balances at the Department of Finance and Public Expenditure and Reform and with the HSE. But we just, in legislation, if we prohibit that possibility in legislation, well, then they can never do it. So we're trying to allow that possibility there, subject to the controls and whatever. I appreciate your fear is that this is a way of circumventing that the state can somehow stand back from funding its necessary day-to-day expenditure. That is not the idea here. The idea is that we do not tie their hands behind their back before they ever start with the ability to expand or to explore a range of service delivery expansion if they so wish. Whereas if we prohibit that in legislation now, they can never do it, and that could be, it's a very understandable objective of any medical entity that would be established in the modern day age, that they would have that facility and that possibility.
But with respect, Minister, if they can never do it, then they'll just be funded. They'll be funded by the state. Are you saying that if without the capacity to borrow, that the state won't fund for innovation and for?
Well, you can answer that yourself. You can look at history. I mean, this is about expanding new ranges of services. This is allowing the entity itself to be creative and to modernise and to be progressive if it so wishes. That's all we're doing. We're not compelling it to borrow money. We're not instructing it. We're just saying if the entity decides and if they clear the checks and balances through the departments of public expenditure and reform, which are fairly significant by any standards, the Department of Health and the HSE, well then that they can. That's all we're doing it here, is allowing it in legislation.
I remain unconvinced, Chair. So.
Thank you, Minister. And Deputy O'Reilly, any other members wish to contribute? No. Deputy O'Reilly, are you pressing the amendment?
Chair, I will withdraw the amendment and I will resubmit. Thank you.
The question then is that Section 8 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? Section 9, again, an amendment from Deputy O'Reilly, Amendment 4, already discussed with 3.
I will withdraw and resubmit, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry,
my apologies. I
that you move.
Yes, I
move and withdraw.
And withdraw.
The question then is that Section 9 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? Agreed. That Section 10 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? Agreed. That Section 11 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? Agreed. That Section 12 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? Agreed. In relation to Section 13, Amendment number 5, again in the name of Deputy O'Reilly. Deputy O'Reilly to move.
I move, Chair. These amendments relate to the board and to the inclusion of representatives for the workers concerned. We believe that representatives of the ICTU, who will, as I understand it, represent the majority of workers who will be working in the new hospital, that they should be represented and they should have the facility to voice concerns. We equally believe that there is a role for patient advocates, and I think that was underlined by the Scally report recently, where he said, and he went further, he said that there should always be two, so that one can act as a support for the other. And finally, on the current board of Crumlin Children's Hospital, there is a seat for a Dublin City Council representative, and we would like to see that continue. It's to broaden out the board, to make the board as relevant and as dynamic as it can be, by ensuring that a range of interests and a range of groups and voices are represented.
Deputy O'Reilly, thank you. Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I do not propose to accept amendment number 5. The amendment relates to the appointment process as the Deputy Head of Board members to the Board of Children's Health Ireland. As provided for in the bill, all members will be appointed by the Minister. Section 13 refers to membership of the Board on establishment day, i.e. that's the first board. The bill has been drafted so that the existing Children's Hospital Group Board, a non-statutory administrative board first established in 2013, will become the first board of Children's Health Ireland. This board is made up of persons who were either appointed or reappointed in summer 2017. This is a competency-based board and includes some members of the boards of the 3 children's hospitals, a member from Northern Ireland and a member with international expertise. The board is currently overseeing the complex integration of the 3 hospitals and transition of existing services into the single body. Retaining that membership will allow the board to maintain continuity and ensures that the first board will have the required competencies to undertake the leadership role required over the next few years. It is possible that the proposed amendment is intended to ensure that all boards, and not solely the first board, are appointed along the mechanism proposed in the amendment. The bill provides that all board members were appointed by the Minister for Health, and in the interest of securing the necessary skills and experience on the board, board members will be appointed on the basis of competencies, experience or expertise deemed relevant to the body's functions. While all are to be be appointed by the Minister, the bill provides that the board of the new entity will nominate 8 out of the 12 board members. In drafting this legislation, we have been conscious of the need to achieve the integration of the 3 hospitals in a way which respects the values and cultures of each. One such example is the arrangements for appointing board members. Currently, the bill provides for a role for the board in the appointment of board members, and as is currently the case in the children's hospitals. The integration of the 3 children's hospitals into one new entity is a major change programme with significant cultural and operational factors. The 3 children's hospitals coming together have been at the forefront of paediatric healthcare. Each has demonstrated enormous commitment to and has established a strong track record and a proud tradition in the provision of healthcare services to children and young people in Ireland. As such, the 3 hospitals are key stakeholders in this project, and their agreement and support are fundamental to a successful transition. Looking at the meaning behind the amendments, I am at one with the Deputy that it is important that the board would be cognizant in its work of the needs of its staff and also of its patients. The bill provides for the body to be given broadly worded functions in such a way that provide clarity, authority and certainty in relation to its key roles. One such role is, of course, the nurturing and development of staff. Section 6, subsection 2D requires the new body to facilitate, foster and promote through education and other programmes the personal and professional development of its employees. The new Children's Hospital is the largest and most complex healthcare project undertaken in Ireland to date. It is recognised that staff may be unsettled by changes to operating and service models, and the location of their work and staff well-being is a key consideration during the transition phase and beyond. In parallel with the capital project, the Children's Hospital Group has a comprehensive integration programme underway supporting staff in the transition and integration of the 3 existing hospitals. Work includes to develop and deliver the employee engagement strategy and plan, to find a list of representative bodies that will need to be engaged with or consulted, and define and document the strategy and plan for this process, develop and deliver the change people management strategy. Regarding patient advocate, Section 6 relates to object and functions of the new body. Its functions include they will provide for patient safety and quality of patient care and promote excellence in the practice and provision of paediatric services. The new body is also required to advocate on behalf of children and young people about healthcare issues. It is clear from this that the focus of the new body is on the care of its patients, ensuring that the clinical operation of the hospital is driven by the objective of improving, promoting and protecting the well-being of children. This will be a function of the whole board and not the remit of one particular board member. As regards the appointment of a Dublin City Councillor, regarding the appointment of that, Children's Health Ireland is a single national tertiary hospital for the country and a specialist service provider for children from all over Ireland. It would not be appropriate for local councillors to be represented on the board. However, there are other ways to ensure that local representatives can contribute. As deputies may be aware, in 2016 the new Children's Hospital Project Monitoring Committee was formed as a communication channel between the National Paediatric Hospital Development Board and local residents and representatives on the construction of the new Children's Hospital. Members of the committee include representatives from Dublin City Council, the National Paediatric Hospital Development Board, councillors and nominated local residents. The objective of the committee is to develop a process for communicating and dialogue to address residents' concerns and issues during the construction phase. Accordingly, I do not intend to accept amendment number 5.
Deputy O'Reilly.
Well, just by way of information, Dublin City Council have a representative on the board of the National Maternity Hospital, and I think that person fulfils a very important role just in terms of ensuring that the board is grounded. I had some experience with another entity that I won't name, where there had traditionally always been a reserve. Custom and practice was that there was a seat for workers' representatives. It was an ICTU seat, but it wasn't stipulated in the legislation, and over time that got eroded, and we ended up with a board that was very heavily where business was very heavily represented, and the workers were not. And it was for that reason that I believe putting it in legislation and ensuring that the workers have the right to be represented, I feel it is important, because I think over time, and I say this because I've seen it, with the best intentions of and what you've outlined are the best intentions in the world, that if we don't codify exactly what we mean, and if we're not in some way specific about it. I mean, the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, as outlined in the amendment, represents almost 800,000 workers across the state, so it would be as their representative as much as a representative for the staff as well, that we would see that would be important. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy O'Reilly. Minister.
Yeah, look, I appreciate where the Deputy is coming from, and she has a long-standing tradition in promoting the rights of workers, and I absolutely respect that. Every member of the board is tasked in legislation with respecting the rights and the needs of the workers and indeed the patients. To abdicate that to one member of the board can presuppose that the other members of the boards don't have a responsibility in this area. There are added complications and challenges, such as there are many workers in the hospitals who are not members of a union. And are they not represented then? Is this just representing the unionised workers? You have situations where consultants, for example, don't regard themselves as in the trade union, the Irish Hospital Consultants Association. There's different anomalies there. But on the broader issue, every member of the board is tasked with representing the best interests, and that's their duty, and that is in legislation, and that is underpinned in the governance. So I would be satisfied that those concerns are taken on board and should be taken on board across the board.
I wasn't suggesting, Minister, that the representation for the workers in the new hospital would solely reside with one, but rather that there would be that they would have a voice and be represented. The same as with patient advocates. That I feel is important, given this is a place where people will be patients. It's also a place where people will work. I believe that worker representatives in other areas do a good job. They do a good job of not holding the board to account, but they do a good job of ensuring that a group that maybe wouldn't necessarily have a voice do have a voice at the table, and I think that's important.
Thank you, Deputy O'Reilly. So, Deputy, are you pressing amendment number 5?
Chair, at this stage I will withdraw and I will resubmit.
Thank you. The question then is that section 13 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? Agreed. That section 14 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? Agreed. That section 15 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That section 17 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That section 18 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That section 19 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Section 20. Section 20 has 3 amendments, 6, 7 and 8, all in the name of Deputy O'Reilly. They are going to be, they're related, so they'll be discussed together. Deputy O'Reilly, do you move Amendment 6?
I move Amendment 6 and for the purposes of the debate, Amendments 6, 7 and 8 are technical amendments that relate to Amendment 5, so I don't propose to speak on them.
Thank you. Withdrawn?
They are withdrawn, they'll be resubmitted.
The question is then that Section 20 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 21 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? Sorry, just technically to go back to you, Deputy O'Reilly, do you move Amendment 7?
I move Amendment 7.
And 7 and 8?
I move Amendment 8.
And withdraw?
And they are withdrawn to be resubmitted.
So again, that Section 20 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 21 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 22 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 23 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? Section 24, again, 2 amendments in the name of Deputy O'Reilly, Amendment 9 and then Amendment 10. As they are related, they will be discussed together. Deputy O'Reilly, do you move Amendment 9? I move Amendment 9.
This amendment is submitted in order to include the subsidiarities of the Children's Health Ireland, that they be subject to oversight by the Public Accounts Committee and the Comptroller and Auditor General. I think people outside of here, and maybe we spend a lot of time talking about accountability and trying our best, and that's all of us trying our best to ensure that there is accountability. But outside of these walls, people, they do throw their eyes up to heaven and think nobody's accountable for anything, and there is no accountability, and that is regrettable. So I think at every opportunity where we have, where we can include additional accountability, that we should. But I think that if there are going to be subsidiarities of Children's Health Ireland, that they should be subject to the Comptroller and Auditor General and the Public Accounts Committee. So, thank you, Chair.
Deputy O'Reilly. Minister.
Margaret, I do not propose to accept amendments number 9 and 10. These amendments relate to the appearance of the CEO before the Public Accounts Committee. The purpose for which the CEO appears before the PAC is for the PAC to examine and report to Dáil Éireann on the annual financial statements and reports of the CNAG in relation to the Children's Health Ireland. Children's Health Ireland will be preparing financial statements that follow the standard rules and will be audited by the Comptroller and Auditor General. Section 9 of the FRS 102, that's the financial reporting standard, deals with the requirement to prepare consolidated financial statements. Under that section, the new body will be required to present a financial statement for itself and any of its subsidiaries on a consolidated basis. This means that the CEO is already required to give evidence on the economy and efficiency of a subsidiary of the new body in the use of its resources and the systems, procedures and practices employed by a subsidiary of the new body for the purpose of evaluating the effectiveness of its operations. It would therefore be unnecessary to reference this separately. So accordingly, as I agree with the sentiment proposed by the Deputy and understand it, I consider it a duplication and so accordingly I do not intend to accept amendments number 9 and 10.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy O'Reilly.
Chair, we do feel that there is a need for this. I take on board what the Minister has said. I will consider what was said here this afternoon, and we may resubmit. But we at this stage, Chair, I will withdraw. Well, I will move amendments 9 and 10 and withdraw with a view to resubmitting following further discussions. Thank you.
So the question is then that section 24 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That section 25 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That section 26 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That section 27 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That section 28 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That section 29 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That section 30 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That section 31 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That section 32 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That section 33 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That section 24 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That section 35 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That section 36 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That section 37 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That section 38 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Sorry, Chair, can I just have just a very, very quick... There used to be, and Minister, you might, we don't have an amendment proposed on this, but there used to be a section when there was either consolidation or transfer over or whatever, that it would be guaranteed that the persons transferring would do so on conditions that were no less favourable. Now that's with regard to the fact that there is a move, so you can't say it's a less favourable condition because I now have to travel to work. That was never in a different location. That was never the purpose of it. But that does seem to be not less beneficial terms. It says, does that have to be? It's on section 2. Does that have to be included in the collective agreement? Does the collective agreement have to be concluded before the transfer date? Or is it possible that it will simply be a case that they say your terms and conditions will be no less favourable and they will be negotiated post the move, or is it your anticipation that that will be locked down in advance of the move?
Of the transfer date.
Of the transfer.
The transfer date, yes, you're query. Okay, so I am informed here that whatever they have on the day of transfer, they hold on to and maintain post-transfer.
Okay, but this only says service and wages. They're sort of the minimum. It just says service and remuneration, a word I hate because I always say it wrong. But you'll know this as well as I do, that your terms and conditions of employment are made up of a whole range of things. It's not just your wages and it's not just your service. And if I'm missing it now, I apologise, but it seems to me that it's quite narrow.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, as I can see there, services, terms and conditions regarding those relating to tenure of office, of remuneration, of those terms and conditions of service or of remuneration to which he or she was subject immediately before the day of transfer. But look, if you want any further clarity, I'm happy to get you to that before the report
because
stage.
it does seem narrow, and it might be that I'm just.
Would you mind submitting it to me? Would you mind submitting it to me? Just
No, I will,
we can
of
be
course.
absolutely clear, and I'd get that clarity for the
Absolutely,
before
absolutely.
report.
I will, of course. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Minister and Deputy. So the question is that Section 38 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 39 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 40 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 41 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 42 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 43 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 44 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 45 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 46 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 47 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 48 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 49 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 50 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 51 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 52 stand part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 53 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 54 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 55 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed? That Section 56 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 57 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 58 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 59 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 60 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 51 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed?
61. Agreed.
That Section 62 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 63 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 64 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 65 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
That Section 66 stands part of the bill. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
And finally, that Section 57 stands part of the bill.
67.
67. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. So the Children's Health Bill 2018, this is the title of the bill. An act to provide for the enhancement of children's health services and for that purpose to establish a body to be known as Children's Health Ireland to plan and deliver paediatric services. To provide for the transfer of employees, land, property, rights and liabilities of Our Lady's Children's Hospital Crumlin to Children's Health Ireland. To provide for the transfer of employees, property, rights and liabilities of the Children's University Hospital Temple Street to Children's Health Ireland. To provide for the transfer of certain employees, property, rights and liabilities of the Adelaide and Mead Hospital, Dublin, incorporating the National Children's Hospital to Children's Health Ireland. To provide for the transfer of certain employees, property, rights and liabilities of the Health Service Executive to Children's Health Ireland. To provide for an additional function of the National Paediatric Hospital Development Board and to transfer certain property, rights and liabilities of that board to Children's Health Ireland and to provide for the dissolution of that board and to provide for related matters. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
As this bill has now completed committee stage, it is recommended that the members submit report stage amendments to the Bill's office without delay, as the report stage may be tabled at short notice. Okay. So, as consideration of the bill has been completed, in accordance with Standing Order 87, the following message will be sent to the Clerk of the Dáil. The Select Committee on Health has completed its consideration of the Children's Health Bill 2018 and has made no amendments. Is that agreed? Agreed. Minister, thank you very much for attending. And
thank you, Chair, and thanks to all the members as well for their cooperation. Thank you.
may the bill proceed to the next stage. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
And this committee is now, this Select Committee is now adjourned sine die. Is that agreed?